How do we do this again, April? How does it go?
Dun, 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 dun. That's the best I got. And another episode of 90s Noise is coming to you. I'm April, watching Nicktoons since 1991.
She stole my intro. This is Ashley, also been watching cartoons since 1988. I'm pretty sure
I
that's
just,
one thing I could say definitely probably was watching early on was cartoons. I mean, not necessarily Nicktoons, but I think
mhm.
cartoons for any age was
Yeah.
a given.
Oh, yeah. Like, I mean, now some cartoons just aren't made for kids, though. Let's be honest here.
Yeah. Yeah, no. Do you watch cartoons nowadays? Like the more, whether it be the more adult ones that they have now, or even just some of these old ones. Do you watch cartoons?
I'm not huge on much. I call it more, I guess it would be more animation, honestly, now. Because
True.
there's really not much cartoons, I feel like.
Yeah, you're right. It is more like an
But
animated show.
I really don't.
Mm-mm.
I was very I was always very limited on like what I truly wanted to watch as cartoons, to be completely honest.
Hmm.
If it didn't have a main character as like an animal, I didn't care to really watch it, to be
Really?
quite frank with you.
I mean, that's a good point.
I think for me, I don't know. I guess like cartoons, because of the fact that it would most of them are very short,
Hmm.
and they don't necessarily it's like a one episode and done. It's not necessarily a continuation. And I
Yeah.
like those continuations. I don't know about you, like, but with shows and stuff,
Yeah, I
especially
mean,
I like,
nowadays, I mean, I don't know
yeah.
as a kid, I understand like as a kid, cartoons were made so where it made sense no matter when you picked up and watched it because as kids, you're not really gonna retain storylines, but also like we didn't have streaming services, so if you missed an episode, you wouldn't get totally screwed. It'd be like, ah, whatever, you
Yeah.
can just kind of pick up wherever. But I'm kind of the same way. I don't even think I watched cartoons like I definitely probably not past high school. Like maybe middle school if I'm reaching, but I was not a big cartoon person. Like even watching animated movies. Like I think I stopped watching animated movies by high school. Like it doesn't appeal to me. I don't know. Like
Mm-mm.
it just I never got behind the like adult geared cartoons. Like even trying to watch The Simpsons, which definitely watched some of that like as a kid in the 90s with my parents,
Oh,
but any other time after that, hell no. Like definitely
we
never tuned in.
yeah, we never watched it. It wasn't appropriate and
The only
everything.
family
And
that never watched it. But it really wasn't appropriate in all like
well,
too many respects.
it wasn't. And so we didn't watch it. I don't know if I've ever actually seen a true full episode of The
Uh-oh,
Simpsons.
we gotta do an episode on it just to see what we
I
missed.
have seen, I did see the Simpsons movie,
Oh, really?
which was which was
That's
really weird. Like
random that you would see that.
I think it was a situation where I was going with friends,
Hmm.
and I was like, yeah, sure.
I have no idea
What's
who
going
Homer
on?
is.
I know that
I
kind of
know.
thing, but I just never truly yeah, I don't think I ever did watch. I've never been a big animated
Mm-mm.
person. It's it's very few and far between.
Yeah, and I think so. Like what we're talking about tonight is like Nickelodeon cartoons from the early 90s. And when I was like looking at some of the shows that were available, um, it seems that the ones that kind of came out in the back half of the 90s were ones that I feel like I gravitated to more. Like
Hmm.
The Wild Thornberries was a big one. Um,
Cat
no, I
dog.
don't. Yeah, cat dog. Yeah, and you're right. Those are kind of more animal based, like Angry
Hmm.
Beavers was the back half,
Hmm.
like stuff like that. But these ones that were kind of more in the earlier, I don't know. I remember watching some of them. Like I definitely remember watching them, but I don't know if it was more of just putting it on and having something
Hmm.
on in the background, like, oh, it's a cartoon. Like, oh, let me just kind of see what
So
is that.
there were some of them that even like the early 90s ones that I watched. I did
Mm.
actually watch, but then there were some of the others, these others that again, I wasn't allowed to watch.
Yeah, because some of them
And
are honestly like going back
it's
and
like
rewatch. I'm like, what? These are
it's
more adult. There's no way.
exactly. It's like what how are you really see how early on Nickelodeon pushed the boundaries and wanted to show they weren't Disney. They weren't
Right.
this mouse thing. It was they were their own entity and they weren't going to be subjugated to being this like super family friendly. They were going to push the
hmm
boundaries. I mean,
Well,
we talked with Mitchell
Mitchell,
about
that's
it.
what I was just about to say. And he was very honest about how the shows that he wrote for, they were very much so like adult gear, like the way that they were
Yeah.
being written, which makes a lot of sense. Like they weren't
Hmm.
trying to appeal to like a kid's audience. I mean, I feel like Rugrats was probably like the one show that you could say was a bit more geared towards kids versus the all the other ones, like definitely an older audience.
Have you Okay, so let's go ahead and get into Rugrats. First and foremost, have you heard the backstory conspiracy theory with Rugrats
I mean, I think I've heard some things, but what are you talking about?
about how all of the babies were imaginary in Angelica's mind?
Yeah, okay. I have heard that one.
Yeah. And that that it was like, what was it? Tommy supposedly was a stillborn.
So
Phil and
dramatic.
Lil were uh, a baby. It was a baby that was aborted, so you never knew
Mm,
which was it, a male or female. That's why it was twins. Chucky died in childbirth with his
my
mom.
God.
Uh, and that's why that's which is just it's very I mean gruesome and
hmm
heart-wrenching thinking of it
Not
in
something you
those
thought of as a
terms.
kid.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if that's
Right, you know how
anywhere
people love
near being
to
true,
create.
but it's interesting. And I was thinking about that while I was watching some episodes.
Do you remember watching the Rugrats? Was that like one of your
Mm,
go-to
yeah.
cartoons? I feel like out of not all of them, but like kind of these early 90s ones, I feel like Rugrats is one that I could still like see myself going back and rewatching. I don't know, it's a fun show and I don't feel like it's not like super cheesy or dated in a
Yeah.
sense to where it doesn't make sense still. Like I don't know, I feel like a lot of stuff that they did and talked about in that show were like really cool. And
Yeah.
I loved the characters in that. Like the voice acting behind it and everything was
Oh,
just
that's incredible.
that's amazing.
That's
Yes.
freaking incredible.
hmm
No, Rugrats was one that I did watch. My parents hated me watching it. Well,
Oh,
not necessarily
really?
hated me watching it, but my dad just despised it being on the TV because of the voices, because it was so like grinding to them and
Mm.
everything.
I guess I could
Uh,
see that. Yeah. It is kind of like a strange show to be watching like a bunch of like like toddlers, in diapers for the most part. And like, you're now like in elementary school and stuff. And you're probably like, okay, why have we not moved past like Rugrats? But I
yeah,
don't know, but it's like a fun kind of like action adventure type show where they always got into all these shenanigans and they like did fun
yeah.
things.
It was definitely one that played to the imagination
Yes.
and helped, I think, still keep even kids that were obviously not babies,
Hmm.
um,
Yeah,
keep
babies
their
wouldn't.
imaginations alive.
Mm-hmm.
Because then you're watching it and you're watching these babies go on these adventures and you're thinking, "Oh, well, I'm older than them. I can go on those adventures too." And
Exactly.
so I do think that's probably part of why it lasted so
It
long.
did last so long. Like, when did it end? It ended in 2004. Like,
Now, is that Rugrats or Rugrats All Grown Up? Because they did,
that's
there
all grown.
was,
Oh, let me see. That seems like a sequel that was a sequel that started in 2003. So,
yeah,
and it went to
because
2008.
now I didn't really watch much of that one.
I
I,
didn't
I
even
watched like a
honestly
couple
know that
episodes,
that was
but
like a thing, to be honest. So
yeah,
they were,
because because they could only go so far. I mean, they kept, it's almost
it's crazy that they
Rugrats.
kept the babies for like 10 years.
Well, it's the whole Pokemon situation where Ash Ketchum is still a 10-year
Still a
old
kid.
boy after 20 years. And so no, this it was funny though. And that I do have this bone to pick with two of these Nicktoons that we watched because I don't like it. The way that they pitted honestly cats and dogs because they had in Rugrats, Angelica had a cat
Hmm.
that was a mischievous little piece of shit,
Yeah, yeah,
honestly.
yeah, yeah.
I mean, to be quite
Mm.
frank, it was a nightmare of a cat. And of course, Spike was
The
the
lovable, family
protective,
friendly.
exactly. And
Mm.
I'm rewatching one of those
Uh,
episodes that kind of focused on the it was the an episode where like the cat was doing all these like knocking the shit over and Spike ended up getting blamed for it and he got put in timeout in the garage and everything and so
oh,
the babies were trying to pretty much clear Spike's name
I think I remember that episode.
and I'm watching it I'm going are you fucking kidding me? Like, yes, okay, cats are can be mischievous little pieces of shits, but I mean, this is putting like a negative connotation of cats in like young children's minds. What the hell?
Yeah,
And
that's true.
I didn't like that because obviously I'm an animal person.
Right.
I love dogs and cats. I absolutely love my cat. And I mean, she is my child in the sense that like I treat her like one. But I was watching it. I'm like, this is really are they these writers must just not have been they must have been the dog people type of
It could have been
situation.
that, or it could have just been the fact that it is very, it's like a stereotype for cats. I mean, you had like Garfield, who was kind of that, you know, troublemaker of a cat, and what was his name? Odie. He was just like the little goofy, like
Hmm.
puppy. And I mean, I always feel like that's kind of how in any show, I mean, like there aren't very many shows that I can think of that characters, families, whatever, have cats. Like, what show do you know? Like, what sitcom, what family, like, whatever, like Seventh Heaven, like, no one had cats. Like, if anything, they
That's
had,
the
because Seventh
thing.
Heaven had a dog, actually.
That's what I'm saying. Well, Charmed, they had cat. They had
Well, I
kit.
mean, which shit, and there's no such thing as like good dog. Like, I don't
But like that, okay, that's the thing. Like, why is there such
maybe it's easier to
this
train dogs for film sets. I don't know. There is definitely something behind it, but
I want to know the answer to this.
we
Like,
gotta talk
what
to
the hell,
somebody
people?
behind these. Gotta find whoever wrote that specific episode and maybe pick their brain behind it.
Be like, okay, why the hell is a cat always connected to the bad guy? I mean, like
Hmm.
if you even think about what is it? Isn't there's why I feel like it's I'm probably completely wrong because I've never actually seen this movie all the way through. Isn't like in Austin Powers, doesn't the evil guy like have a cat also?
I'm pretty sure I haven't seen that movie
I
since it came
I
out, but
I feel like
A cat
I
does
remember,
sound
like I can see it like almost in my mind, like Mike Myers
like
and his
holding a cat.
evil guy get up or whatever.
There's also
But
that Darn That Cat movie, which I think
that darn that cat,
ah, Darn That Cat. Is it that darn cat? Whoops.
that darn cat,
Oh, that's hilarious.
darn that cat. Oh my goodness. Next time I see you, I'm gonna be like, darn that cat.
Oh, that's too funny. But I think that one's about a probably a bad cat. I don't remember.
No, that one's actually
No?
that cat's a that one's a good one. That's not a
Why is it
niche
called that darn cat?
because I think it's just because the cat does is like going out. It's not staying home and it's but I don't know. It's been so long since I've seen that one also, but it's not a cat being
Wait.
evil
Mm,
situation. The cat's actually helping, okay?
okay.
But anyways, as we digress like always. Um well, okay, so there was that and Rugrats, and then they did the same shit in Doug.
You're right. Because he had obviously the dog, like the main
Hmm.
dog.
And
And
then the
then
bully
the bully had the cat.
had the cat.
Whoa.
Hmm.
Hmm. Somebody
Yeah,
at Nickelodeon didn't like cats.
yeah. I got bone to pick with you.
Literally.
Yeah.
I so rewatching Doug, it's funny because I feel like I remember watching that show a lot, like the theme song, the characters, like it's
Hmm.
all so like familiar. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, like it gives you that nostalgic feel. But rewatching it as an adult, oh my God, it's awful. Like I don't like the characters, I don't like the voicing, like just the story, it's dumb. Like, I'm not, I mean, if you're a fan of it, great, but like I don't know, it just wasn't funny. Like I was like, what was I watching this show for? Like,
I don't know. Yeah. I
did
was the
you
same.
like it?
Growing up, I watched it decently. It wasn't
I felt like it was
one of
always
those.
on. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. It really was. But I didn't much care. I didn't much care for it when rewatching it. However,
Mm,
I did because I remembered the whole cat thing. I was like, there's this, I even looked it up because what I did was for Doug and Rugrats is I watched
you
the
found all the
first
cat
episode.
episodes?
Well, I watched the first episode and then I found like the one that I remembered that
Okay.
happened and it happened to be the cat ones. So I talked about the one in Rugrats. For Doug, it was the one where Stinky, which is the name of the cat,
Mm.
is the bully needs somebody to watch him. And so Doug ends
Isn't it
up,
Doug? Yeah.
yeah, ends up getting roped into it.
Yeah.
And it turns out that Stinky was a female and was pregnant.
Oh,
And
yeah.
because the bully had put Stinky on this strict diet because he
Oh,
was getting
get
fat
fat. Oh,
and Stinky
stop.
was wanting all this different food and stuff. And there's like this one little scene where it's Stinky's alley cat with some alley cats and
Woo.
everything. Um like drinking milk, and it was kind of it had a sense of a bar feel, like this cat's out partying, and then Doug's trying to feed it the food, and Stinky won't have it, and Doug's eating pizza and Stinky's like howling for pizza, so he gives him
Oh,
pizza and ice cream and all this.
oh my
And
God. Yeah, please don't feed your cat pizza and
yeah,
ice cream,
don't
guys.
ever, don't. And then Stinky's got like this massive tummy ache. And so Doug has to rush Doug and what's his Skeeter?
Mm-hmm. Skeeter.
They rush him to the vet and thinking that Stinky's gonna die because they overhear them saying something about, oh, if he had been just I don't know what we're gonna be able to do. This kind of like hearing sentences
Ooh.
out of context. And turns out it was just that Stinky was going into labor and
Oh.
had delivered kittens and all this kind of stuff. But yeah, I was like, why is it always the mean bully or whatever has the cat and the good guy has the dog? And I'm just
Right,
like,
yeah. Those are
I didn't
some
like that. I didn't
heavy-weighted
like that.
stereotypes.
Hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what it was with Doug. Like, what were they going for? Like, I know they're probably trying to talk about a lot of different topics for like people that age or whatever, but I don't know. I don't think I must not have watched the show and like connected to the storylines. I think I was just watching it
Hmm.
to watch it, you know what I mean? And like
Yeah.
sometimes it's fun to just kind of see characters like doing things and whatnot, but I don't know. It was very grating to listen to them again and like it's like wah wah, like all these problems. It's like every episode, like
Hmm.
wah wah, and it's like okay, like where's the fun? And like some of the jokes and stuff that were being said, I'm like these are not hitting the same anymore. They are not
No.
funny. I'm like,
Mm-mm.
yikes. I mean, because I mean, it went on for like most of the '90s. That's how like big of a show it seemed to have been, and like people loved it.
Yeah. I I didn't care much for it.
It's yeah, it's definitely at the bottom of my list. Like right now, like just if I'm thinking about my rating here, it's going at the bottom so far. Like that's a stinker. That's a real stinky.
Yeah.
But one show that I do remember really liking was Rocko's Modern Life. Did you remember watching that show at all?
That was one that I wasn't
I
really
wasn't
allowed to.
allowed. See,
Mm-mm.
now we're kind of getting into like shows that are a little bit more adult
Yeah.
themed. You know what I mean? Like
Oh yeah.
Doug, Rugrats, okay, those are kind of like kid friendly, like anyone, whatever. But then you have like Rocco's and Ren and Stimpy, and those are like raunchy, almost type like
Hmm.
topics. Like
Like Rocco's was
it was still fun
Rocco
though.
Rocco's what I feel like wasn't quite as bad as Ren and
No,
Stimpy.
oh God, no. I definitely don't think it was pushing the limit as much as Ren and Stimpy was. Like they were, I
Hmm.
feel like with Ren and Stimpy, they were trying to do anything and everything, like get away with as much as
Yeah.
possible. Like I was rewatching some of I didn't watch like full episodes, but I was rewatching some of like the clips and stuff. And the one that I happened to get onto, I was like, this is like a sexual act just about that they were
Yes.
doing. I'm like, kids were
Yeah.
watching this? What did we even
Well,
think was going on?
well, that's the thing. Like, so it kind of almost, I mean, we're kind of almost doing this in like how they like PG
Mm,
13
yeah.
R kind of thing. So I would say Rugrats is definitely like
G.
PG.
I think G. I
Well,
think Doug is more PG.
I'm kind of yeah, so PG 13. Yeah, okay. So
Mm.
my ratings. So yeah, G for Rugrats, Doug more PG.
Hmm.
Kind of like
They have
there's
some
because
jokes that were a little bit like, yeah, that's a little
yeah,
dirty, but not
it was also dealing with I mean the kids were in what middle school or
social
something.
issues. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
I think Rocco would have to be next, like
Rocco's
PG-13.
PG 13
Hmm.
definitely. Some of the things in it were definitely went over kids'
Oh
heads.
God, yeah. I'm sure if I rewatch like the show now, I'd be like, holy crap, like this is I
Wasn't
get things now.
didn't they work in a mall or something? Like a
Yes, I'm
shoe
pretty sure that there was
store or
some
something?
what's I don't remember what they worked in. But that does sound familiar that they were working as like a oh, I don't know, it doesn't say here. I think for me the part that kind of resonated the most with Rocco's was just the fact that Rocco was like coming from Australia, you know? So for me, I
Hmm.
was like, you know, I kind of I've had that Australian influence growing up. And so I think seeing like a show that kind of brought some of that in because I don't really feel like there was anything else like that. I mean, as a
Okay.
cartoon,
So what was he supposed to be like a kangaroo or
he's a
something?
wallaby. A wallaby.
Wallaby. Okay.
Well, so like
Okay.
a whatever of a not a kangaroo, but they're like similar-ish. I think wallabies are
Yeah.
smaller, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So, and then you had the one guy, I forgot his name, but he was like a
The,
steer.
you mean I'm just looking at the names here. Is it a heifer wolf or a
Probably. I
big
mean,
head?
it's kind of like a play off of like a heifer, like a steer.
Yeah. Yeah. Making kids say that like, oh yeah, we were watching Heifer Wolf in Rocko's Modern Life when you go to school.
Mm-mm. Yeah. Yeah,
Nice,
no,
nice
it's
job, Nickelodeon.
definitely, I mean, just reading this thing on here, it said it was infamously laden for its adult humor, double entendres, innuendos. Like, so yeah, I mean, it was definitely trying to start pushing those. See, I think Nickelodeon at this point was trying to see like how far they could go.
hmm I think Rocco's Modern Life walked so SpongeBob could run.
hmm I do too. It definitely paved the path
hmm
for that.
I do remember I just kind of looking at some of these little like clips and pictures, like the photos. I do remember there was a they went to like a theme park
I remember the theme
and
park
stuff.
one. Yeah.
I remember some of the episodes. It's just okay, really? Okay, so I didn't remember this, but the freaking vacuum called Sucko.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
You know what's funny though? Like the guy that did the voice for Rocco, he's
Uh-huh.
obviously American, like whatever. But it said he is the one that did the Chihuahua in the Taco Bell commercials,
Really?
which we all know is like a huge 90s freaking
Oh
like
yeah.
that's
Wow.
hilarious.
That
Huh.
really is.
But I mean, that's kind of the thing with a lot of these Nickelodeon shows. I mean, and it was the same for like Disney. A lot of these voice actors did a lot of these other cartoons. They didn't just do the one. I mean, they were heavily influenced in all these other
Oh,
ones that came out.
yeah. I mean, okay, voice of Tommy Pickles.
Not a
Was all
guy.
is not a guy, first off, and a plethora of other voice
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah. It's kind of like, you know, Jim Cummings for Disney. I mean, these some of
Yeah.
these Nick voice actors are like legends. I mean, they the voices that they've done, it's just amazing. Like it's and because some of these voices, it's like the ones in Doug, you're like, who is doing these? Like, but I
Yeah.
think if I'm not mistaken, hold on, I wanted to see the guy that does Doug, he's also the guy, he's also one of the characters in Ren and Stimpy. So like he did the voice of the main character Stimpy, but he's also the character of Duck. Like that blows my mind right there because those are
Oh
so
yeah.
different of voices. And like I could get by listening to Stimpy all day, but listening to Doug and his like I was just like I can't, you know, it's crazy.
It is insane how much of a range these people have. And
It's that's pure
it's
talent because that's not easy.
it
What was
really isn't.
I was listening to a podcast the other day. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I remember I was listening to like talking about the Mary Green Ashley one, but because the one girl like does these accents all the time, whatever, and she's pretty good at them, and the other one really can't. And they were referencing like an SNL episode and how like some of them like if you're on that show, you should be pretty good at doing accents. Like otherwise, don't do the skit if you can't do the accent because it just doesn't play well with the whole thing. And so they were talking about how some of them were like really bad at this one accent. And I was like, I'm listening, I'm like, oh, let me try this accent. I can't do it for shit either. I'm so bad at accents. I'm like, don't even have me try. Like, I couldn't imagine trying to like come up with these voices for these characters because honestly, a lot of them probably made the voice for these characters. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
I'm sure they were the ones that were like, oh, I think they should have, they should be talking like this or whatever. Like that just blows my mind because I can barely speak normal. I just
Yeah.
can't do an accent.
Well, what was I watching? Oh, I was watching a clip from, I don't remember if it was a podcast or if it was at a convention. Uh the girl who does Ahsoka in Clone Wars, like the
Hmm.
animated Clone
Okay.
Wars. I guess when she had gone to interview, they were wanting her to, or not interview, to
Audition.
audition. They were wanting her to do an Icelandic accent or
Oh
something.
my God.
Kept on practicing, worked with the dialect coach,
Hmm.
all this kind of stuff, and goes in and they go, okay, can you be more Icelandic? And she's just, I
If you want me to be more Icelandic, hire an Icelandic.
well, that's kind of, and it was that they then ended up with it. Obviously, she doesn't do an accent or anything,
Mm,
but it was just one of those things where it's like, it is crazy how, as actors, whether you're voice actors or focus more in front of the camera
hmm
acting, how you have to be very fluidic
hmm
in how your voice is, like your intonations, the different ways you say things. I mean, hell, we were just rewatching an episode of Psych, the one with Chris
mm,
Sarandon,
hmm
and he's an American actor, but he does a British accent in that episode. Carrie Elwes is a British actor who can do a large variety of different
hmm
accents, and just how much work goes into that, because yeah,
It's a lot of work. Yeah. I
you really
mean,
don't have the, I mean, I can't do accents worth a shit.
no,
Like,
no.
I mean, I try and
I
just for the hell,
try, but I know it's terrible. And it's like,
yeah, and I'm
we've
not
all
saying,
seen movies and stuff where an actor has had to put on an accent that's not their own, and you're just kind of like, okay, like why did they make this movie? Like that's one of my biggest things is like you have a cast of Americans and you make it set in like, UK or something. So everyone now has to put on like a British accent. You're like, why the hell wouldn't you have just made an American movie at this point? Because this is so bad. I can't even watch the
well,
movie.
not not just that. I see, I have issues with sometimes how they do things like that. Because, okay, or another nice little tangent on this, but uh Harry Potter,
Mm,
for when it first was being filmed and being cast, it was, they weren't casting anybody who wasn't from the UK,
right.
which was funny because the director was American, all that. It was UK, 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 UK. Like, if you weren't, or European, and I think it was mainly focused UK, then they kind of
Branched out a little bit.
branched to just European. They
Hmm
they were, it was very, they were very against putting an American
hmm
in a British role. But then when they were doing Fantastic Beasts, which
Mm.
is it's the continuation, but it's the pre entire Harry
Yeah,
Potter
yeah, yeah.
series. They spent a lot of time in America. I mean, the
Hmm
first movies in
True.
America. One of the main actresses who's supposed to be American is British actress putting on an American accent.
Hmm.
It's like,
Hmm.
okay, you guys were
Hmm.
so strict originally. I mean, what, you couldn't find a
Decent. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, I'm not saying that there's anything against doing the accents or anything of that sort, but
Right.
like you said,
If you can do it well, it
if you can do
translates
it
just
well,
fine.
okay, but it's one of those things where it's like,
Yeah. It is,
sometimes it's best.
yeah, it's weird to have like shows that you watch and people are in their American accent, and then you find out later that they're actually British, and you're like,
Hmm.
okay, their role still would have made sense if they had their accent. So why not just let them have their accent? You know what I mean? Like, because there's plenty of people here in America that have British accents and they work in all these normal jobs and all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. Like, why? Like, and I think that's kind of been a lot of like issues with that whole industry of like people that like if you're gonna have roles, let people that portray that or like they are that portray that. You know what I mean? Like don't
Hmm.
hire someone that's white when you're looking for an Asian role. You know what I mean? And I think that
Hmm.
it even has translated into voice acting. I know there's been like a lot of shit about that. Like you have all these voice actors that are not who they're portraying as their character, that they're it's whatever. And people are like, if you're going to have a character that's XYZ, why can the actor or the voice actor not also be XYZ? You know what I mean? Because it's like
Hmm.
there are tons of people out here. Why does it all have to be just like white Americans? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. It's a controversial topic, but I
Hmm.
think there's not enough representation and all of that. And I think we've seen that plenty of times in the Disney animated roles. Like
Yeah.
some of the people that are behind those princess characters are
Uh,
not necessarily their same
yes.
ethnicity and all that.
Yes, I absolutely, I'm 100% for diversity and everything. But then I also have to think about the fact, and I mean, this does kind of go against what I just was saying myself too, but okay, so if you've got people of all ethnicities going for a role, do you give it to somebody just because their ethnicity matches,
Hmm.
or do you give it to somebody who matches, okay, if you're looking for
Embodies the
vocal,
character.
yeah, embodies the
Hmm.
character.
Yeah.
That's where you kind of you've got to figure out which you're going to go with.
Hmm.
And for me, I as long as there's like full transparency on it, then I feel it should be the person like that
Yeah, the
embodies the
person that
character.
does the
And
best. I mean,
yeah.
because I feel like with voice acting, you can almost get away with it a little bit. Not
Oh,
saying
that's
that
what
they
I'm saying.
should, but I do feel like
That's
you
yeah.
can.
Because I mean, okay, you could have.
I will say that the one thing with Doug that is kind of different is the fact that like the characters are all very unique and they're all different
I
colors and stuff. So you don't really know
that
what they're supposed to be. Like I do kind of
that
like
was
that
one thing.
concept. That is
Hmm.
very because like it doesn't allow you to go in and be like judgmental, like, oh, you're
Hmm.
orange or oh, you're whatever. You don't really know. Like they're just people, they're doing their thing. And I feel like that was something quite different and ahead of its time, especially as
And
like
I
a
think that's
cartoon.
and I think that's probably why it resonated with so many
Mm,
people and why it lasted for
hmm.
how long it did.
Yeah.
Because it did kind of break that barrier in a sense,
Hmm.
especially for a children's network. If you can do the job, then
Yeah, I agree.
more power to you. It is interesting though, like when you take the human aspect out of an animated and a cartoon, like with Rocko
Mm,
or Ren and Stimpy, and then to see who they do cast for what characters and
true.
different things. And I'll be honest, I don't remember Ren and Stimpy as much as I do Rocco's. Ren and Stimpy, it just I never I an even as like a young teenager and everything, I just
Mm.
never was comfortable watching that. Even when I was
Yeah.
allowed to. It was one of those where when you get like a pit, like that feeling in the pit of your stomach that just something isn't right.
Well, yeah, and I feel like it was too adult that things just didn't hit. You know what I mean? Like you're
Hmm.
watching stuff and it's like you're seeing him like act out these things, and a lot of it's physical comedy. So if you don't really care for the physical comedy, if you don't really know what they're doing or saying, it is kind of just like a okay, like what am I watching? They're not really
Hmm.
doing anything like Rugrats where they're going on adventures, or like Doug, they're talking a lot about like school stuff and social issues and relationships and things that you could relate to a bit more. Ren and
Hmm.
Stimpy was just kind of like way out left field. And I don't think I really remember too much about that show either. Like I do remember some of like the physical comedy of it and that kind of thing, but I would be curious because I will be honest, I didn't really watch like full episodes of Ren and Stimpy. I would be curious to see if as an adult it like works better. You know what I mean? Like since it
Hmm.
was technically geared more towards an older audience, would I find it to be funny? I don't know, because like I said, we don't really care for cartoons, so it's kind of
Yeah.
like I gotta force myself to sit there and watch it.
Yeah. I I'll be honest, I didn't rewatch Ren and Stimpy because that
Yeah.
was just one that, like I said, I after a while, like I steered clear of that one. Even when I had the opportunity to watch it,
Hmm.
I was like, I there was like one or two episodes I did see that just it almost kind of scarred me. It was
As a
one of
kid
those like
or as an adult?
as I think it was more like a preteen
Okay.
where I just it was almost like that flight or fight scenario,
Mm.
like where you put your body in that fight or flight
Hmm.
where you know that you shouldn't be in this situation type of deal. I just remember it was Ren and Stimpy that I was watching this show, and I was just extremely, extremely uncomfortable watching it and was very confused in regards to why, because
Mm.
obviously I was preteen. I didn't
Right.
really everything was going over my head, but like the back of my mind, kind of
It's like, is
somewhere
this
in my mind,
like why are
I
they talking about
knew
that?
knew somewhat of what they were talking about, and it was just this is not something I want to be
Yeah.
a part of or anything. So,
Yeah, I don't care for like that very like sexualized, like, all those innuendos. I don't care for shows like that. I never really have, still don't. Like
mm-mm,
it's that stuff just, I don't know. It's not really funny to me, and it kind of is, I don't know, like it just doesn't always work. You have to be very careful with it. And
yeah.
I just think that, I mean, props to Ren and Stimpy and stuff for doing what they did. And I mean, I feel like it seemed to have worked. I know like tons of people love it, and it is still kind of like it's one of those things where like the characters are very familiar, like the characters and kind of know like their quirks and stuff. But
Hmm.
the show as a whole, it's like, is it one that I would ever recommend or go back and watch? Like, no, like absolutely. I just don't. I wouldn't want if I had kids, I wouldn't want my kids watching it. You know what I mean?
Mm,
Like, I can't
no.
imagine if I had that on and if if my parents were around, like, did I ever watch it like that? I don't know. Like, I don't really think I did. If I did, it was like flipping through and maybe catching the tail end of it, waiting for, your next show to come on or something.
Hmm.
So maybe you see like a little bit of the end, but I don't think I ever would have sat through like a whole episode because that type of humor just never worked as a kid, and that still doesn't like work
No.
well for me. Not when, and it's like I feel like they always try to like get away with doing that kind of thing when it's cartoon based, with all of the
Yeah, okay,
animated stuff.
exactly. There's, which I don't
You
understand.
put two bodies in those roles, and that's not going to go over
There's,
well. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
there's
Like, but
no
you're using
way.
animals, like, come on.
That's where I think yeah, they tried to get away with it because of the fact that it wasn't humans
Yep,
and they weren't depicting humans.
exactly.
It's
What
not even
show
like,
do you know that has humans that are doing stuff like this? I don't think that it exists because they probably can't do it because it would be like this.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying?
and
And I
that's
think, yeah, that's why we didn't like it.
yeah, yeah,
Don't do that
I
to
didn't
our animals.
no.
We like the animal shows, but we like them when they're in like
They're actual
happy,
animals.
fun settings, and they're just like normal.
We're talking to the person who will literally walk out of a theater if
Hmm.
something bad happens to an animal.
Or even sometimes
Literally.
like it's mentioned or something. Like sometimes I don't even like that when they like talk about what they've done or what they would do. You know what I'm saying? Like I,
If it's
it depends, but it
it
like
depends on how
sometimes.
deep it gets.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
if it's just like a quick like 2 second thing, I can go over. I can like
Like
block that out.
there's
But
some, I don't remember exactly like, but you know, they would be like, there'd be like a bunny or something hopping and they'd be like, oh, and then they would like transition to them eating dinner and they'd be like, oh, this is so good. What is it? And they're like, you know, that bunny or, you know, and like, I don't like that kind of like humor. I think
yeah,
that's just shitty.
yeah, I don't care for it with especially being like used as a humor sense.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, hell, it took me, well, I only just watched the first John Wick about a few years
Oh,
ago.
yeah.
And I literally had to be like on my phone during that part because I otherwise I wasn't gonna be able to get through. And that's I think why for especially with cartoons, I always like I said, I kind of if I watched my cartoon watching was always more the friendly type, like
Hmm.
not the let's see what we can get away with type.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Did you, so another show that's kind of like, it's different, but did you watch Real Monsters?
Real
Ah, yeah.
monsters.
Did you watch? So I
Yes.
feel like that one is, it's different from all. It's like, it's not like kid friendly like Rugrats and Doug, but it's not like raunchy and adulty like the other two. I feel like
Kind of-
it's kind of got its
It's
own little
it's kind of
pocket.
yeah, it's kind of very
It's kooky.
nightmare before
Yeah.
Christmas type.
Ooh, yeah.
Like I feel it's the very Halloween
Mm-hmm.
town situation type.
Yeah.
It's been so long since I've seen that.
I know. I didn't get around to watching any of those because I wish I would have because I like that genre of like it's comedy but it's a little horror, you know what I mean? But it's not
Hmm.
like a scary like, you know, trying to watch Are You Afraid of the Dark or something, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's a different because it's just animated like little running around. So
Yeah. I remember that one, yeah. And because that was the intro to that, if I remember, was pretty interesting. Like the one with the
the
that was
big
mostly lips.
yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that was a pretty decent one.
That is a very who created that show though? Because that's so like
It's so different
it's so
than
right,
pretty
as I'm
much
saying, like it's a whole different direction for Nickelodeon to go towards, like to have all those other ones, and then this is the next direction they took. But then I
hmm.
don't feel like, oh, Tim Curry was a voice in it.
I remember
Who
that.
was he playing? Zimbo. Oh my gosh. I definitely want to go back and rewatch a couple of these for nostalgic sake because I feel like that's one that I could see myself watching a bit more now
Hmm. Yeah.
because it's not like I don't feel like it's childish.
So, you know what's funny? So I just pulled it up.
Hmm.
So one of the people that's listed as a creator, Peter Gaffney,
Peter Gaffney? Sounds
who
familiar.
also, now I don't like this. So it's like it has them as created by, but they only list like 11 episodes.
Hmm.
And,
So like
but he,
is he the one, you know, like how Mitchell created like Clarissa, like that was you know,
yeah.
is this his baby or
Well, that's so I'm thinking it probably was. So I think it was, and I could be completely wrong on this, but I think it was created by Peter Gaffney,
oh
Gabber
yeah, I said co-creator
Suspo.
with Ooh, I'm gonna butcher that name. Gabor
Gabor,
Chupo.
how'd you pronounce
Gabor Chupo. Well, that I'm looking at the wiki. They have like the
the
pronunciation like thing.
oh wow.
It says
That's
Chu like Choo and then Poh Chupo. It
oh
definitely is not how
wow.
I would read it.
That no, how I read it is
Supo?
supo, yeah.
Chupo?
That's
Like,
that's
so sorry. It's
that's
Hungarian. That's cool though.
okay. All right, that explains because I'm
But yeah, I guess because oh yeah, their animation studio is Klasky, oh, wahoo, balloon time, Klasky Chupo. So they did a lot of other productions with like Rugrats,
that's what I was gonna say. Rugrats,
As Told by
Peter
Ginger, which
Gaffney,
was a great show. We'll be talking about
yeah,
that one. Oh, love
Peter
that show.
Gaffney was also uh, did stuff for Danny Phantom.
Oh,
Yeah. Oh wow.
hmm,
He did a lot.
very
Fairly Odd
interesting.
Parents,
So yeah,
Recess.
it definitely
Yeah.
seems like Real Monsters had a whole different team behind it versus like you could tell like with Ren and Stimpy, Rocko, like they had like similar, people kind of working behind the scenes, writing and all that kind of stuff. So it
Hmm.
definitely was a much different crew because it's just the stories, the humor, like all that is just so different than other stuff. And I mean, like,
Yeah.
okay, so if you had to pick your top two that we talked about, which ones would they be?
Probably Ah and Rugrats.
Ah, ah, is that how they did it? Ah.
Ah, real monsters. Yeah, that's how they did it. Yeah, so it was always because, and that was part of why I think I liked All Real Monsters because it was real monsters.
That
So
was a great intro. Yeah.
that was a great intro. So I would probably put that
90s noise.
first,
Okay.
and then Rugrats. Just because, like I said, I did watch Rugrats a decent amount,
Mm-hmm.
and I did transition a little bit into grown-ups, Rugrats all grown up, and just to kind of see where it went.
Was it
But
any good? Was it?
it
It
was
doesn't.
putting them in like I can't remember if it was high school or middle school, but it was just
Such a weird concept. I know they did that one episode where they were like, grown-ups or whatever, but I can
well,
imagine
that's
like a
what they
whole,
played off of.
yeah, yeah.
And so
That was that now a whole episode was just weird. So
they played off of that into a series, and and at that point, I mean that was early 2000s, like 2003 or whatever, I think is what you said it started.
mhm.
At that point I was already really starting to get away from that. Was It's funny because it was you watched Disney when you were like super young, then you went transitioned to Nickelodeon, but then you
You went back
transitioned
to
back to
Disney.
Disney
Mm-hmm.
and
Because they had the
everything.
better like middle school, high school shows.
Yeah. And so I was in the Disney, the back to Disney
Mm-hmm.
portion at that
Mm-hmm.
point. And it was usually just Nickelodeon when it was like still the kids programming on Disney type of deal.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Hmm.
but what about you?
I think I would probably have to say the same, to be honest. It would have to be Rugrats and then Real Monsters. Like I like Rocco's, but not not enough to, I don't know, because it's still kind of it's like leaning a little bit towards that humor that's just kind of like I can only take it in like little bits. And I only
Hmm.
really like it for the fact that there's a wallaby as the main character. Like if they would have made it into a different type of like, I don't know. I think I probably would have loved it way more.
Yeah.
Um, but there were just still some parts of it where it was like, okay, you're getting into that realm of like where you're not really focusing on the kids and stuff that are watching it and we're just not understanding it. But I mean these cartoons definitely were a big part of growing up. I think that's why I don't like cartoons anymore because I just watched way too many through the
I
90s. I was
understand.
just like, ah. Too many cartoons.
Hmm.
Animated
Yeah,
movies, cartoons, animated.
I get it.
And now I just watch real people in shows.
I know. That's kind of how I am too.
But I mean, that's all I got on cartoons for now. I mean, there's still plenty more to talk about in the coming years, but those will be for another time.
Absolutely. So, until next time.
Come back and see us again. Bye.
Bye.